The judge handling Rick Harrison's court case has just told him a shocking thing, something that's changed everything. Rick used to be the guy who could talk his way through anything, turning old junk into treasure on national TV. But now, he wasn't behind the counter making deals. He was standing in court, waiting to hear if his own life was about to be taken away like a bad deal. The man known for spotting secrets and antiques was finally facing the one secret he couldn't hide: his own past crimes. And what the judge said next would change everything. And that's exactly what happened. Inside the heavily guarded Las Vegas courthouse, a crowd had gathered for what was being called the trial of the decade. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but leaks from the courtroom had been pouring out like water from a broken pipe. Journalists camped outside. Fans were torn between disbelief and dread. And inside, Rick Harrison, pale and almost unrecognizable from the lively businessman viewers once adored, waited for a judge to decide what would become of him. What no one could have guessed, not even the sharpest legal analyst or most expert bloggers, was that Rick wouldn't wait for the judge to speak first. He would deliver a confession so shocking, so painfully personal, that it would flip everything we thought we knew on its head. He confessed to murder, but not just any murder. Rick Harrison admitted in front of a stunned court that he'd taken the life of his own father, Richard Harrison, affectionately known to fans as the Old Man. This wasn't some vague admission twisted out of context or dragged out through interrogation. Rick walked to the stand, asked to speak, and when granted the floor, blurted out years of secrets in one devastating monologue. The room fell still. Even the prosecution, which hadn't built its case around this, looked blindsided. "I did it," Rick said. "I killed my father." He went on, his voice shaking but steady enough to cut through the heavy silence. He spoke about control, how Richard never let go even when the camera stopped rolling, the power struggles, the threats, the resentment. Behind the scenes, the pawn shop wasn't just a family business. Rick claimed it was a prison, and he, the supposed face of it all, was merely a puppet with golden handcuffs. "He told me I'd never be free," Rick said, eyes cast down, and I believed him. On the night of Richard Harrison's death, once believed to be natural causes from complications due to Parkinson's disease, Rick told a very different story, one with deliberate action, one with a motive, and one with a lifetime of emotional baggage boiling over into something irreversible. I told myself it was mercy, that I was helping him end his suffering, but it wasn't, it was selfish. I wanted out, I wanted control. The courtroom didn't erupt into chaos, it didn't need to. The silence that followed said more than screaming ever could. People sat still, absorbing what they had just heard. The prosecutor looked like he'd seen a ghost. Rick's defense attorney tried to interrupt, to stop the confession, but the judge waved him down. This was happening. And when Rick sat back down, the judge, after a long pause, finally spoke. What the judge said next would reverberate far beyond the walls of that courtroom. "You have not only betrayed your family," the judge said, staring into Rick's hollow eyes. "You've betrayed the trust of millions of people who looked up to you as a symbol of integrity and transparency. But even more than that, you betrayed a man who gave you everything, even if that wasn't enough for you." Rick visibly trembled. His usual stone-faced expressions slowly faded away as his face cracked, showing tears in his eyes. This wasn't a man hearing a standard sentencing. This was a man watching his identity crumble to dust. "The law cannot restore what has been lost," the judge continued, "but it can ensure that the consequences of your actions are neither forgotten nor forgiven. You did not act in a moment of panic or confusion. You made a choice, and you must now live with the full weight of that choice." The sentence hadn't even been read yet, and already it felt like a noose had tightened around Rick's legacy. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed like bees to honey. News anchors struggled to keep pace with the gravity of the revelation. Social media platforms became a war zone. Some fans accused Rick of fabricating the confession to gain sympathy or deflect from the other criminal charges he faced. Others saw it as a tragic admission from a broken man, finally forced to come clean. Obviously, the detaining of the spearhead also had a terrible toll on the Pawn Stars franchise. Pawn Stars was pulled from all streaming platforms within hours. City authorities closed the gold and silver pawn shop pending further investigation into fraudulent records and other criminal probes sparked by Rick's shady activities that had been kept under wraps. Merchandise was recalled, sponsorships vaporized. It was like watching a building go down in slow motion, turning into rubble floor by floor. Cut to the courtroom. The judge delivered the final blow. Rick Harrison was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He didn't flinch, he didn't cry, he just nodded. For the first time, he looked like he understood the full weight of what he had done. What followed was a cascade of consequences. Former employees at the pawn shop came forward with stories of intimidation, manipulation, and sketchy dealings that had gone unreported for years. Allegations of falsified appraisals and hush money payments began to surface. One former employee claimed Rick had pressured staff to keep quiet about backroom deals that never made it to TV, transactions involving rare artifacts with questionable origins. The History Channel released a brief but pointed statement. "We are devastated by these revelations and have severed all ties with Rick Harrison and the gold and silver pawn shop effective immediately." Meanwhile, the Harrison family, what was left of it, was scattering bit by bit. Several relatives issued denunciations. Friends of Richard, the old man Harrison, expressed horror and disbelief, many claiming they always suspected something was off but could never prove it. Rick's own son, Corey, delivered a powerful confession that not only exposed what he had witnessed during his father's illegal dealings, but he even expressed his remorse and shame in having to be raised under his wing. Some anonymous insiders even claimed that he was the one who tipped off investigators after discovering inconsistencies in his grandfather's medical records. In the days following the sentencing, prison footage of Rick showed a man in total isolation. He refused visitors, declined interviews. Some speculated he was writing a memoir behind bars. Others believed he was simply falling into silence, either out of shame or cold calculation. But for the public, there was no resolution, just questions. How did no one notice the cracks in the family? Why did the medical examiner initially rule the death as natural causes? Were others complicit in the cover-up? And perhaps more damning, how much of what we saw on Pawn Stars was real, and how much of it was theater meant to distract us from the chaos behind the curtain? Rick Harrison's story isn't just a fall from grace, it's a cautionary tale about perception, power, and the cost of buried secrets. He built an empire by convincing people that behind every strange object was a fascinating story. In the end, the strangest object was the man himself, and his story, the darkest of all. So when the judge told Rick Harrison he'd betrayed the world, he wasn't exaggerating. He was drawing a line in the sand.